Hello and welcome to our show. Good morning, Judy Copenbarger. How are you today?
Oh, I am absolutely fantastic on this bright, crisp fall morning. It's a great day.
It sure is, folks, and thank you for joining us this morning. Today we have a very special show for you on Money Truth Moments. Today we are talking about families with special needs children, and that's a subject that's also very dear to me because I've been involved with special education, special needs children and adults as well for a long time. So I'm so happy that you are covering this topic today.
I'm happy to do it, Carlos. It's near and dear to my heart as well.
All right, folks. And if you're not following Judy, please do so at judycopenbarger.com. We've got a lot of great things for you today. So I want to make sure that we get started. So we'll begin by talking about special needs children and who they are. Obviously you've had experience, I've had experience, but let's you and I just kind of, define what we're talking about for special children.
Yeah. Well, for our conversation today, when you think of a child, you think of someone who's not yet 18. So legally, by definition, that's what a child is. But for our discussion, we're going to be talking about children as well as adult children, because sometimes there are people that need protection well into adulthood and maybe even for their whole life. So when we look at, breaking down the special needs, there are so many ways that you can, put someone in that category or require, special needs label, if you will. Back in the 1920s, there were all kinds of diseases in our country. It's funny, 100 years ago, right? But there were several diseases they didn't quite have a handle on. And my grandmother had one of them. And she ended up giving birth to my uncle, who had special needs his whole life. And back then they used the word retarded, which is now offensive and we don't use that. But he was a lot like that Savant show with, what was the show with the guy and the brother and they went to Las Vegas? Rain Man.
Oh,
He was a lot
yes.
like Rain Man. Yeah. And so by the time he was about 8 or 10, my uncle had to go into a home. He wasn't safe to be with my mother and her sister in the house or even, anywhere in town. So he went to a home. So on the weekends he would come, and I remember all the holidays on the weekends, we'd have the holidays and he'd spend the day with family and then go back to his home with a bunch of other guys. And he did that until he lived into his late 70s. I believe he was just almost 80 when he passed away. But there's this cognitive or developmental issue that happens sometimes in people. And then we have all these things like cystic fibrosis, Down syndrome. There's more than there ever were. Autism is touching so many families, and they still can't figure out what the common denominator is. The nice thing about having the awareness about these things is we've got hospitals and foundations that are doing such great work to bring awareness to these conditions and these diseases and things like that, to help solve the challenges associated with families that are dealing with these issues. So that's become fantastic. What is really crazy is how much more there is than there was 20 years ago, 50 years ago. As a kid in grade school, I didn't see a lot of special needs people. So I don't know if they were at home or in facilities or if we just didn't have as much. And I think statistically, there's just a whole lot more than there used to be for whatever reason. Maybe it's our lifestyle, our diet, medicines, we don't know. Especially with autism, they're thinking, it might be shots that you take or it might be something in utero. We don't know. But for our purposes today, special needs means there's some condition which requires either physical or cognitive help or protection for people, not only while they're little kids, but as an adult child as well.
Okay, excellent. And I'm glad you really defined that too, because I've also seen throughout my career so many stories, some amazing stories, some devastating stories over the course of my life and career. But let's get to some questions I know that come up, and I know that folks have asked, and especially parents. One of the big questions that comes up is, if I die first, what will become of my child? That's a big one.
Yeah, that is a big one. And that's where you just got to plan, educate yourself. There are ABLE accounts. ABLE is an account specially designed for special needs people that need protection, where they can actually have money. It's not going to be taken away or keep them from being eligible for any state or federal benefits. So an ABLE account, there's so many trust things and trust provisions you can do with legal documents There are special needs trusts. And a special needs trust is not something you fill in the blank and go online to get. It's actually legal provisions that are built into a trust that you properly create with an attorney. When you do that correctly, it solves so many problems. And hopefully we'll get to talk about that a little bit later. Another thing that you can do is set up powers of attorney for an adult child of yours. If they need help, who will be able to help them? Who would the court look to, or the bank look to, or the escrow company look to if they need to deal with something that would help your child if you're not there and available to do it?
Excellent. And it's, as we're talking about this, so there's a lot of parents that need help, right? And they also realize that they cannot do this by themselves, especially if they're single parents. And some of the questions also that come up are, protecting the child's assets, right? And you just briefly talked about, but what can they do?
Yeah. Well, you got to work with an attorney that gets it. Any attorney can do a trust or a special needs trust or set up a power of attorney. And you can even go online or go to the stationery store and print one out, right? Or something. But you need to work with an attorney that understands estate planning as well as tax planning. And then beyond that, all of the appropriate financial instruments, and they understand special needs of special needs families. So if you find a combination that has all of those four things, or a team that has all of those four things, it's very different than a regular family that doesn't have these issues. And one word in law, one word or one provision in the wrong place or left out gives you a whole different outcome. And it might be hundreds of thousands of dollars difference in outcome, or millions. So you want to really get that right. Go with an expert that knows what they're doing in this very narrow area of law.
Excellent. And folks, if you're just joining us, thank you for being here with us this morning. Every Tuesday morning, 8 o'clock, Money, Truth, Moments with Judy Copenbarger. If you are not following her, please do so at judycopenbarger.com. All of our social media platforms are on there. And there's also a wealth of resources, which we'll talk about a little bit later as well, too. But you will find, and congratulations, by the way, on a best-selling book, Money, Truth, and Life. I know that's on several platforms. It's become a bestseller, so congratulations on that.
Yeah,
And,
yeah, it's
that's a great achievement. Thank you.
Well, it's not just me. It's a team that has helped people that are looking for what we have find us. And I really respect the work that they do to get the word out. And just, everybody wants to navigate well financially. They don't want to make mistakes. They don't want to screw up and have to rebuild or reboot or start all over again. And so by avoiding so many mistakes, they can just keep that trajectory going, keep that momentum going. And people are finding our work that helps them just kind of stay on that path, be clear, and get there quicker. So it's very exciting to put it out into the world and have people's lives changed because they just know better. And when you know better, you do better, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I also want to keep moving forward here because I don't want to miss out on any of these questions that I think are very valuable for our audience. But what about maintaining eligibility for any benefits available for a child's welfare?
Yeah. Well, we mentioned briefly a special needs trust, and when it's done properly, it will allow the assets to be preserved for the use of this special needs family member. So the issue then becomes eligibility. If they have too much money, which is very little, like a couple $1,000s, no eligibility, right? Or income. You want to make sure that you can maintain eligibility, but still have the family resources available. So if they need transportation or a special vehicle that has a lift on it, if they need some kind of special facility built onto the house or ramps or something, if they need special training or cognitive development or therapy or something like that, it's available. But you have the money there, but it's used by a trustee for the benefit of this person. It's not actually directly given to them. That's how you blow up eligibility. It's a big problem.
Excellent. Also, let me see how I can word this, but let's talk a little bit about caregiving plans, right? While parents are alive and beyond that too. I think that kind of ties into the very beginning of our questions as well.
Yeah. Well, having appropriate cash reserves, really cash is king. The more money you have, the more opportunities you have. Insurances, so whether it's health insurance that covers these issues, whatever the special needs are, it might be life insurance, where grandma or grandpa set up life insurance that now has become cash to be used for this, generations to come. It could be money held in trust. It could be special housing where you have a home or a series of homes or a duplex or something that is always there for this special needs of child or children as they grow. But most importantly, I think when you're thinking about the planning, it's not just the amount of money you have, but who is going to be in charge of it. Who are the people that you're going to entrust with the future development and protection of your child? And you want to go deep. You don't want it just to be, well, my husband and me or my wife and me.
Mhm.
What other siblings might be helpful? Aunts and uncles, fiduciaries, people in your church, neighbors, other people in your special needs groups that understand what your family's going through and they get it. There might be people in those kind of groups that could step in the event that you and your family members are not available. Any decision you make is going to be way better than a decision any court could come up with. So when thinking about planning, you want to allow for who the caregiver is going to be, who the decision makers are going to be, and who's going to have access to the assets that are going to be used for that future care. And you want to be really clear when you're spelling out these provisions. I guess if we have time in a minute, we can go through what kind of provisions. It's all in the Money, Truth, and Life book. People can go online. It's on Amazon on Kindle for like $1 or $2. Or they can go online at Barnes & Noble or Amazon or Target or Books A Million and get the book Money, Truth, and Life. I've got one right here. That's the bestseller we were talking about. And in it, it talks about some of these legal things you can do, some of these financial instruments you can use if you have a special needs family member or child, what you can do. And it also talks about things you want to make sure you don't do, whether or not it comes from the advice of someone on the outside. So you want to get this right, do it once, do it right, and then you'll have that protection in place for a long time.
And also peace of mind. I mean, that's a big one too. So yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
It's also, this leads me to my next question. It actually has to deal, unfortunately, it comes down really to money, right? How do we deal with that? So how can parents have the sufficient funds during the lifetime and beyond, to take care of their kids? What are some maybe strategic things that you can share with us for them to plan ahead with that?
Yeah. Well, more money means more choices. So you
Right.
want to accumulate and position assets so they're favorable regarding taxation, estate planning, succession, but really about sustainability. So what's the sustainability? Like for my uncle, he lived a long time. He way outlived his mother. His mother died when he was a young boy, but his dad made it to his mid-90s. That was my grandpa, right? But he couldn't take care of him that last 20 years of his life, my grandpa. And so he was in a home and he would just make sure all the provisions were there, the finances were there. He wasn't in a great big skilled facility with hundreds of beds. He was in a home with just a few boys, men, and that worked out really well. But my uncle outlived my grandpa by a long time. And so making sure that care was there, making sure that the state benefits were there that he needed, making sure there was money there, but not too much, just enough to make sure he had what he needed. So it's about sustainability. So you want to make sure, this is another thing, put caps, not from my family experience, but all the junk I see out there, put caps on the fees that trustees, and in particular corporate trustees, can charge. They will charge you trustees' fees, accounting fees, reporting fees, recording fees, all this stuff. And if you don't put limits on that in the documents you're setting up, they will definitely take advantage when they see a big pile of money. I hate that happens, but it happens. And they'll justify it with, it's just really hard to do this. A lot of it's not. There is liability and there is a fiduciary responsibility for these trustees, but they can do it for a whole lot less than 5 to 10% per year. It's crazy, the numbers that I see out there. So it's just a matter of, sometimes you don't know what you don't know. So you want to educate yourself. You want to know what you need to know, anything that applies to you, and be a student of this area of the law. Be a student of this area of finance if it's touching your family. Learn what you need to know so you can smell it. Something's fishy, you can smell it.
It's again, it's a very profound subject. It hits a lot of homes here in the States and all over the world. And it's also a very important topic that I'm glad you're talking about and sharing some resources for parents as well. Thank you, folks, for joining us this morning. I am speaking with Judy Copenbarger. You can follow her at judycopenbarger.com. We talked a little bit about your successful book, but I also want to let folks know that on your website, you do have a wealth of resources. One of those great resources is also your online mastery program. Maybe you can tell us just a little bit about that and what folks can find within the program.
You just got to go. It's amazing. It goes through all the pillars of finance: taxation, special needs trust. It goes through all the legal parts, the financial parts, even distinguishing what's a Roth IRA and a traditional IRA. How are they different? How would I recognize a stock from a bond, and how do they work? And should I have some or all of them? All of that's in there. So it's a course that allows you at your own pace, on your own time, to just watch the classes that you want to watch. I recommend them all because it's amazing what people pick up. But it's just information delivered in a very consumable way, practical, healthy, true, and it'll give you what you need to know so you have the right information, so you know what questions to ask next, and you can kind of check what you're doing with what actually works and is optimizing, and then line it up. So that course is available. It's minimal cost. In fact, you can go on for a week for free right now and take all the classes you want for a week. And after that, if you want to take more, that's great. But worth sharing, worth doing. And I would love to hear from you what you learn or what you gain perspective about. Like, I never thought of it that way before. I hear that a lot. So I'd love for you to visit that course, take a couple of classes, let me know what you think, and you'll be on your way.
And folks, and that's one thing I want to make sure you guys are really pay attention to. There's a lot of great resources that we're fortunate that Judy is sharing with her wisdom. This isn't really about money for Judy, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in the next couple of questions. But not only by visiting the website are you going to get a wealth of free resources. Check it out. It's going to cost you nothing to visit, but the amount of knowledge you're going to gain from it, it's just incredible. So make sure that you do. Make sure that you share your experience also with us too. So let's talk a little bit about how all of this is also going to affect a child's physical, developmental, and emotional needs. And after you're done with this, I want to share just a brief story of a personal experience I've had with a child as well too.
Oh, great. Well, more money means more educational opportunities, therapies, well beyond the state and federal programs. And I'll tell you, they've become really good in the last couple of decades since we've had little kids. Amazing what's available now that wasn't before. When you're creating family memories, the more money you have, the more times that you can go out to the zoo or take a little road trip if that's available for you. Cognitive training, bringing in specialized people who can train, speech therapy, anything like that. For travel, medical help, having the appropriate facilities for transportation. We talked about, a lift on your vehicle if there's an ambulation issue, making sure that you have the right, everything you need in your house. I'm just thinking of so many conditions, all the way from a child that's in the hospital bed their whole lifetime, even if it's a short lifetime, to someone who can really do what they need to do, but they need their own space. And I think of all the autistic families in my life, and they're, for them to have a safe place to go with the sensory issues that they have, that maybe is soundproof or maybe is light proof, or that gives them the environment they need to just really thrive, or the equipment to thrive, communication equipment and things like that for the severe ones, musical instruments. All of these things, the more money you have, the more choices you have when it comes to the different ways to just enhance their lives at whatever level they're at. And there's just, it's hard without talking about one certain condition. There's just so many things that can be done.
Right.
And again, the more money you have, the more availability you have for experts to help you, and then to resource the experts with what you need for tools to enhance these lives.
Yeah. And part of what I wanted to share with just very briefly is you mentioned communication equipment. So back when tablets were just coming out, I will never forget a fourth grader, a young man. My background has been in education, working with special needs students with regular education and also that as well. but this student was always very frustrated. As a little kid, I would see the level of frustration with, with him trying to communicate because he didn't have the verbal skills to do it. It was all about trying to point or this. But when the first tablets came out in some of these programs, they were able to give them a voice by pointing and having that talk.
Wow.
I will tell you the expression on this child's face and going up and down the hallways because he can say good morning by pressing a button, and just that smile was just like mind-blowing. To this day, I will never forget that. It was just one of those transformational moments. It's just like, wow, incredible how positive technology can be to really help a lot of these kids, for sure, communicate and have a better life.
Yeah. I think of all the preemies. We used to not have so many preemies because we couldn't save them, so early and like now. But blindness is a big issue with these early born babies. And, dealing with that, a family that has to, have the instruments and the communication devices and training and all of that for the little kids with blindness. That's a lot too. So there's so many categories, and the more resources you have, the more planning and money that you have, obviously the more opportunities that you have that way.
Yeah. So finally, let me ask you, last several weeks, we've been talking about legacy. That's been a big theme for us in what we've talked about. Part of that is also what I want folks to know, that everything that you've done up until this point, it's not been about money, truth, and life. It's been about really not the money. It's been about your legacy.
Mm-hmm.
You've given out a lot of wisdom, and a lot of wisdom, let's face it, for free. A lot of these resources are free in your website because you want people to succeed. And that's something that I admire a lot about you, giving back to folks so they can be very successful. Following that, I want to make sure that we talk about how can we create a legacy as parents so that a child remembers us as that caring parent who meant well and did right by them.
Yeah. Well, it's all these things. It's your life story. It's your life lessons. It's leaving your life print, like who you are and what you stood for, on their lives at whatever level they can understand that. And then when it comes with how you can transfer that, any way you can communicate that. So it might be through picture books. It might be through whatever that online thing is where you send your pictures and it comes back in a nice hardbound book. I can't think of it right now, but you know what I mean. So it might be photos. It might be keeping a box of all those special awards that you earned, pictures that the kids drew when they were in school, the little crafts they made you, the rocks they painted, things like that. It might be those kind of personal things. But beyond that, it can be, like we talked about, the money that is used for these future educational events and these future life experiences. The things that you can do legally and financially to set them up, the powers of attorney, the special needs trust done right, sitting down with a collaborative and a comprehensive financial and estate planning team, or someone that has all that background that can lay out a blueprint for you. So you think about at the other end of my life, when you're thinking about legacy and creating one, at the other end of my life and my child's life, with special needs or not, what would I like to have happened? What would I like to have put into motion where they can say, this is the result we got. This is how life went. This is what I got from my mom, from my dad, from my grandparents. This is the legacy they left me. You want to think about that end game and then work backwards. What do I want them to say about their experience that I had a hand in? And how can I create that now? So when I get there, we can look back and say, we played that well. We planned well. We positioned resources. We got the right help. We had the right documents. We didn't waste anything. We didn't waste time or money or be inefficient with all of that. It's kind of stewardship, right? Just being efficient with it. Did we get the outcome that we wanted for our life and for theirs? That's what legacy is.
Awesome. And I appreciate you sharing that. Folks, if you're just joining us, thank you for watching us. Make sure you follow Judy at judycopenbarger.com. Make sure you also share out this video with your friends because this is a very special subject. And speaking of subjects, it's time for my favorite part of our show. All right. So last week we had a quality of life challenge, right?
Yes,
And I
you did. How did
four
you
different
do
questions.
that?
Hey, you always said you got to write down your stuff, right?
Right.
Pen and paper always works. So for sure. Um, so I'm going to answer your first question. Your first question, I remember you asking were, what's more important to you than money?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And for me personally, it's peace of mind, my faith and peace of mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing could ever, it's more important than anything, because having that peace of mind creates like this ripple effect for everything else in my life, for family and so forth and so forth. And I think what, in looking back, what I've started to do is your second question was how many hours per week would I like to add, right? So I've started with maybe 20 minutes every morning when I get up at 5 o'clock. So now I'm up to about 30 minutes to 35 minutes on that. So I've slowly done increments on it. So before my day, goes chaotic before 7 o'clock, I like to just, have a moment to meditate, say prayers, whatever I need to do in the morning before I get started. Definitely number three was what other activities we can add. And one of them, because the gyms have been closed, I don't really have a place close by that I can just, get in the car and be there in 2 minutes. So I've actually forced myself to sign up to an actual gym that's open. It's a little bit further away. It gives me about a 10-minute drive to wake up so I can get there and do my workouts every morning like I was doing it before. So that's number three. And I think I'm working on the process of achieving these goals. But I got to tell you, even just the small increase amount in the mornings for me to take time for me has made a difference. Getting my day started, I feel just let's do this. So that I wanted to share that with you from last week's challenge.
That's awesome. It sounds like you filled out a whole page. You're working on your health, working on your relationship, your faith, all of that. And then everything impacts everything, which is the whole point.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that. Yeah, I had people tell me, they started hiking, they started Bible study, they found online speakers like faith leaders and speakers that they can listen to, and the gurus, like the business gurus. Several people said, yeah, I went on and I was challenged to really grow in my business. And a lot of people who didn't do online business now are doing online business. So they need to know how to do that. And so they're finding resources to help them do that online. So it's just great, but it's every part of life, just what can we do to add just a little bit? So I love that. Thanks for sharing that. Here's this week's challenge. Are you ready?
Yes. Hey, got my pen ready to go.
Watch pen. Okay. Write down your end game. So whether you have special needs children or special needs family members or not, what result do you want? Not a whole epitaph, but what do I want my life print to be? What do I want them to say about me or receive from me? Maybe it's stuff. Maybe it's your jewelry and your furs and all that. Maybe it's money that they could do something special with. Maybe it's a wonderful family experience that they have together on your behalf when you're gone. Or maybe it's something that they know about you because you took the time to write it down and leave it somewhere for them. So that's it. What's your end game? What do you want? Looking back at the end of your life, what do you want that to be? The other thing is a little more relevant to today's conversation. Oh, somebody's singing in the background. I heard a puppy. So here's the second part of your challenge. Who can you share today's information with? What special needs families do you know? What people do you know that are dealing with this who could really be well-resourced in this information? They need this information. List 5 people. You know at least 5 families or 5 people dealing with this and probably looking for answers that we're able to provide or at least point them in the right direction. You want to share this information with them. Your challenge is to find 5 people that you can share this with. So whether that you go on or send them to YouTube where they can watch a video or 2 similar to what we did today, whether they can go back and watch this on Facebook, this replay. Maybe it's the online mastery program, Money, Truth, and Life online mastery program. Maybe it's picking up the book and just studying that part. But people that need good information about special needs, and they're probably laying awake at night trying to figure out if they've done something, did they do the right thing? Or if they haven't done something, when should I start and where do I start? So 2 things, write down your end game and share this information with 5 people who really need it. There's your challenge.
Excellent. Thank you, Judy. And folks, thank you for tuning in for our Money Truth Moments with Judy Copenbarger. This has been a really very emotional show today. I hope that you really share this out with parents, especially those with special needs children, to make sure that they get the resources needed, and maybe some of the questions that have been asked in today's show as well too. So Judy, thank you for joining us, folks. Remember, every Tuesday morning, 8 o'clock, here on Money Truth Moments with Judy Copenbarger. Always a great pleasure, Judy, and thank you for sharing your wisdom.
My pleasure.
Okay, see you next week.
Bye-bye.